Welcome back once more. Last time you were here, we became Planeswalker literate. We learned of what made the Planeswalker tick, the spark, and what galvanised it into ignition. Further, we know contemporary Planeswalkers are of a different kind to their godlike precursors, whom existed prior to the reality-bending event of the Mending, which we will explore in due time. Recall too that Planeswalkers are the central entities and driving force of the MTG lore. Their different desires and wills shape the multiverse. However, before the Planeswalkers had their influence upon the multiverse, its fate was in the talons of dragons. This episode marks the beginning of us exploring the chronological lore of Magic the Gathering. Of course, we'll begin at the very start, the earliest recorded event, the time of the Elder Dragons, and the Elder Dragon War. There is no precise way to determine the exact date of the Elder Dragons and their war. Estimates place it tens of thousands of years ago, in an almost incomprehensibly different era. Within that era, unfathomably powerful beings, the Elder Dragons, existed and monopolised Dominaria. They had the innate capacity to planeswalk without the need of the spark, and the magnificence to be worshipped by the lesser beings as gods. Not even planeswalkers were able to subdue them. The Elder Dragons rivaled their talents, and this was prior to the Mending, when planeswalkers were akin to gods themselves. The magnitude of the Elder Dragon's power was constricted by the multiverse. So much power with such little room. It is perhaps inevitable the Elder Dragons clashed, and war was born. Brother fought brother, and sister fought sister, in titanic battles that reverberated and tore through the multiverse. Eventually, the dust settled, revealing a handful of elders who were victorious. Those that won became the progenitors of all true dragon species in the multiverse, whereas the losers were killed, or worse, disgraced, stripped of their wings, shorn of their limbs, and denied their power by a word spell. They were rendered to forever be on the ground. These maimed dragons bred the other lesser dragonic species, such as the landworms, the drakes, and the vashino. We know there were at least 5 victors of this mammoth conflict who we can name. These became known as the primary Elder Dragons. Chromium Rule, an Elder Dragon comprised entirely of metal and representing the mana colours of black, white, and blue. Arcades Saboth, whose history post-war is shrouded in debate. He represents the mana colours white, blue, and green. Palladia Mors, their surviving sister, representing white, red, and green mana. And Vivictus Asmodi, their cousin, representative of black, red, and green mana. And last, and certainly not least, is a name synonymous with tyranny and extreme power in the multiverse. Nicol-Bolas, the strongest brother out of the siblings of the Elder Dragon Wars, representing red, black, and blue. At the apex of the war, Nicol-Bolas' spark flared into being, granting him status as a planeswalker, and forever cementing him as the most ancient planeswalker still alive to this day, and one of the most profoundly powerful. He is a name you will become more and more familiar with as we continue with our explorations. I should say it is only assumed that these were the only named survivors, but it is very probable there were more, such as in the case of a dragon named Piru. There is a fierce debate as to whether Piru is an actual Elder Dragon or a descendant sired by the victorious Elder Dragons. There is nothing entirely concrete to substantiate either way, though it does keep us aware that there is the potential of there being further survivors of this war. This Planeswalker has a theory that another survivor has recently been centre stage of the lore. Then, keeping to the theme of rigorous documented evidence, I won't discuss it here. Nonetheless, those 5 names are at the epicenter of the conflict as the victors. They spread out across the multiverse, constantly accumulating their power, and occasionally clashing with one another again. Further, they went on to sire lesser elder dragons, whom in turn went on to sire the diverse spectrum of true dragon species seen throughout the multiverse, such as Hellkites. As you will see, the Elder Dragon War was the catalyst that set the events to come into motion. The Elder Dragons initiated it all, and their influence is as ageless as it is far-reaching. Right, so I'm going to level with you. This episode in particular was incredibly difficult to write and research. MTG lore prior to around 1997 is, well, with all due respect to the writers and the editors and everything, was a bit of a convoluted mess, to put it politely at least. I spent hours and hours finding all the original references in comic books and cross-referencing them with lore databases, the community's information and archives that are stored in very old HTML, like MySpace type thing. It's crazy. But at the moment, MTG lore has been split into 2 broad categories, pre-revisionist lore and the revisionist lore. The pre-revisionist lore is simply anything in Magic the Gathering literature that was printed before 1997. And the majority of it is shrouded in theories and individual interpretations and back and forth debates, whereas revisionist lore is where it kind of got beaten into shape. It's more straightforward and it flows more logically. With this in mind, I did feel the pre-revisionist Elder Dragon lore was important enough to do an episode on. It simply, well, it basically serves as a skeleton for what a lot of the other lore is built around. It's highly likely that I've missed details, or, you know, as the case with abridging, kind of, you know, had to skip details simply. But I felt like this telling gives enough of a picture that, in spite of its murky details, the gravity and the impact it has is not understated. There is a ton of debate, as I said, about this lore and a lot of the pre-revisionist lore, and if any of that ever crops up, I will, staying in character as much as possible, kind of say, well, we don't know exactly what happened, but here are the theories, and this is what this person thinks, and this person thinks, and, you know, credits here and there. More or less. It's a mess, and I'll try and organise it. There are a few primary things to take away from the Elder Dragon lore specifically, though. First, that the victors are the progenitors of all the dragon species throughout Magic the Gathering lore, which is an interesting point. Second, that the event itself is pinpointed as the beginning of the chronological Magic the Gathering history, and things kind of chain reacted from there, with the characters and the victors going off and screwing their own things up in certain other places in the multiverse, which triggers this thing, and it rolls on from there. The third thing, probably the most important, is the name Nicol Bolas. Nicol Bolas is considered by many to be one of the central antagonists of the Magic the Gathering lore, and the Elder Dragon War is his history and his story of ignition. And as I said in the episode, he is a name you will become more and more familiar with, if not so already. Oh, and just a bit of random trivia for you. The MTG format Commander is inspired from an older format called the Elder Dragon Highlander, which was created in honour of the Elder Dragons and their battles. Many players use Commander and EDH interchangeably, so in that way, the earliest piece of MTG lore we have access to is still having an influence on the actual card game to this very day, which is quite awesome. So until next time, keep releasing your untapped potential.